Hello and welcome back to Season 3 of Sequelisers, the show all about fixing bad sequels to good movies. If there was a good movie that was followed by a terrible sequel, you better believe we're going to try and fix it. Of course, as always, I am your host, Jack Chambers, and the four men colloquially known as the two teams of titular Sequelisers. The team of Alec Plowman.
Yo.
And Stuart Ashen.
Well, hello there.
And the extreme Ghostbusters to their real Ghostbusters, Mr. Tim Maytom.
Hello.
And Matthew Stogdon.
Trying to think of something good to say.
You failed.
Yeah. I'll go with hello.
That'll do.
Yeah.
And if you hadn't already guessed by my obscure reference to cartoons separated by decades, this episode is about fixing a sequel to an 80s classic that was about 5 years in the making. We are fixing 1989's Ghostbusters II.
Hang on. That's the internet getting really angry.
Right?
That rising tide of rage. Stemming from Tim.
Vigo the Carpathian was cool.
No, he wasn't.
He was, but nothing else is. That's it. That's all we need for episode 1, I think.
He was badly dubbed is what he was.
Yeah, that is true.
So, Ghostbusters 2 is, as you kind of hinted at, Matt, just there, widely regarded as not that bad by some certain people. Like a certain age group on the internet seem to think like, yeah, it's really good, it's underappreciated. Blah, blah, blah.
Which age group is that?
Toddlers. Fucking idiot toddlers.
It could be precisely mine, because I love Ghostbusters 2.
In the early 30s crowd.
Yes.
I was reading something about this earlier, and apparently a lot of it is the people who grew up with whose introduction point to Ghostbusters was the real Ghostbusters cartoon rather than the film, because they were then of an age where they watched that as their first theatrical Ghostbusters movie.
See, I am that exact example, but this film can get in the fucking bin. I think, should we just go around the room and just sort of say what if we like it or not? Because I think that'll probably set the tone for the rest of the episode.
Yeah. Alec, how do you feel about Ghostbusters 2?
It's fine. Like I don't love it or hate it. I think it's not as good as the first one, but I don't think it's as awful as some people think it is.
Fair enough. Stuart, how do you feel?
Yeah, I'm similar. It's just a little bit less of the joy in it than Alec. I'm sort of, yeah, it's fine, I suppose. But I do remember the disappointment when it came out, when we all went to the cinema to see it. Like, more Ghostbusters. Oh. Well. Oh.
Tim, I have a feeling you're going to be the most positive.
Yes, and I'm happy to represent the Ghostbusters 2 loving crowd here. I think it's great. I saw it many times before I saw the first one, which probably has a big impact on my
That would make sense,
attitude towards it. But also, I've gone back and watched it many times since watching the original many times. Watched them both multiple times. And not only do I think it's a perfectly acceptable film, I think it's better than the first one in some regards.
Is that the first time? This is the first time for Sequelisers.
The description of that person, that perfect generational bubble of people who think it's really good, usually say what you've said, Tim. It's the idea of like it's actually better than or as good as the first one. Yeah, I personally. Now this is the thing. I will sound vitriolic, like I hate the hell out of it, but I kind of don't. I just think it's incredibly weak. But I would also say, going a little bit fucking further and pissing off people just a little bit more, I don't really like any of the Ghostbusters stuff.
You stole my line, Matthew Stogdon.
I do think the cartoons are reasonable.
I'm in 100% agreement with you, Mr. Stogdon. I think the cartoons are the best Ghostbusters things, and the films are all fine.
This is interesting, because I thought I was going to be the only one to say, I mean, I like Ghostbusters, but it's not as good as people say. It turns out there's people here who
Bloody
like
hell.
it less than me.
Yeah, I thought I was going to be the only one who was like...
I mean, it was huge. It was the best thing in the world when I was like 8.
Oh, yeah,
but
yeah.
I am no longer 8.
Yeah, Transformers, Turtles, and Ghostbusters. Those three were huge when I was a kid.
Transformers, yeah.
Cartoon has an amazing pedigree of people working on it. It was J. Michael Straczynski, and it was someone else who's really big in the same sort of world, but it does lots to tie it into the Cthulhu mythos and stuff like that, and it was actually like pretty well received and apparently holds up very well. I can't say I've watched it recently.
It's on Netflix now, and I watched a couple of episodes recently because my wife loves the hell out of the real Ghostbusters. It is still ropey 80s cartoon. It's not perfect, but it's so bold and confident with its audience. doesn't talk down to people. It's really well presented in terms of what it is.
Has anybody seen any of Extreme Ghostbusters? I've never seen any, but I heard it was quite good.
I rather like it.
It's good. Yeah,
I've seen all of it once upon a time, and yeah, it was all right.
It was a really good natural successor to Real Ghostbusters.
which is interesting because a lot of the weird things and problems with Ghostbusters 2 is that it is basically a continuation of Real Ghostbusters and not the first film. There's lots of weird influences, and the fact that so you've got the original film is 1984, Real Ghostbusters is 86, and then Ghostbusters 2 is 89. The fact that Real Ghostbusters got in there in between the two films, it had a weird amount of influence, and Janine's character completely changes from 1 to 2 because of how she is in Real Ghostbusters. The look changes, her attitude changes. It's really weird. And, of course, Louis is like a totally different character, suddenly a member of the Ghostbusters. Like, okay, yeah, sure, we can put a proton pack on him, but he becomes that in Real Ghostbusters, and that carries on over into the second movie. And it's kind of this weird... Yeah, I guess a continuation. If you haven't seen the cartoon, I think it loses a lot of what's going on.
It is interesting because the question is, would this movie have gotten made without Real Ghostbusters? Because Ghostbusters is a popular movie, but I think that Real Ghostbusters and then the accompanying toy line is the thing that makes Ghostbusters into a massive household name, and it also makes it into a thing for kids. Because I think the first Ghostbusters is for kids in that it's a family movie, but it's also a bunch of SNL guys. So there is that going for it. But then I think, yeah, Real Ghostbusters was the thing that really made it into a children's franchise.
Yeah, there's some interesting almost nods to that in the film where you have Ray and Winston doing kids' parties, and then the kids are no longer interested in them. They want He-Man, which feels like a commentary on where like the 80s toy market or toy-focused cartoon market was at the time. And I think it is more of a family-friendly film, definitely. Like, you haven't got Dan Aykroyd's ghost blowjob in this one, or any of that stuff. Yeah, I think it's definitely, like you say, it's more of not necessarily a kids, but definitely a family-friendly romp.
Yeah, because as we said earlier, the original Ghostbusters it's still a family film, but it's an 80s PG families film. So you still have, as you say, the blowjob joke. You've got tons of smoking. You have surprising amount of swearing. In fact, these things don't get reclassified either a lot. So it's still a PG, despite the fact that if it was released now, it'd be a solid 12. And things like Slimer in the second film becoming a huge element of the film because, again, he's a huge character in the cartoon.
And becoming a sort of good guy as well.
Oh, yes, completely.
That kind of flipped because he was popular with kids.
Exactly. And you had the sort of very horrific makeup in the first one. I seem to recall that as a cab driver looks like a Romero-esque sort of zombie prop. The later remake of Romero stuff. But and he's just this really gnarled Tales from the Crypt kind of looking beast. And then it just became these glowing spectres who were very innocent because, again, it was easier to present it to the audience. And I would say ultimately that you ultimately were right. The only reason this film was made was because the cartoon was a success.
Yes, there was studio pressure on Aykroyd and Ramis. They didn't want to do another one. They said, right, the story's done, we're finished, we want to go off and do other stuff. We don't want to keep doing sequels and stay with one franchise and get pigeonholed in our careers and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, studio pressure, and then suddenly, Alec, you mentioned toy lines. I know you're a bit of a toy expert. The toy line was a huge factor in this, and you get characters like Slimer. Everybody bought or built their own fucking proton packs out of cardboard boxes and a bit of a Hoover and stuff like that. It became a huge thing for kids, and that kind of is what causes the tonal shift going into Real Ghostbusters, and then again, it carries on into Ghostbusters 2, in that it's this weird tonal mashup of like really weird, gory scenes, and then family-friendly comedy and gags and stuff, and it's this weird kind of, I don't know, it just doesn't gel very well for me.
And yet at the same time, we're talking about how this was reworked for an audience to sell toys to kids and be more presentable, so you'd have Pete McNichol's character of fucking Janosch being so ridiculous and so henchman-y and
it's totally a Polish accent, everybody.
Yes. Convincing and authentic. Yeah. But I, despite saying all that, Vigo the fucking Carpathian scared the shit out of me as a kid.
Me too.
Still fucking does.
Actual real-life murderer.
Yeah. It's just terrible. With the voice of Max von Sydow. No, it's just a really terrifying individual and image, and just a thing that resonated with me as just a overbearingly creepy thing.
I think, as much as I champion this film, I'm not like completely oblivious to its flaws, and I think there's a fascinating kind of portrait of where it does something incredibly well and then instantly ping-pongs back to something really bad. There's the scene where Janosz is coming to collect the baby, and it's like a blackout, but he has like these beams of light shooting out of his eyes, and it's such a disturbing, great image in that moment, and it's really creepy. And then once he grabs the baby, he suddenly turns into a ghost nanny with a ghost pram flying away off into the distance, and it's such a that moment is just like a just such an undercut of this like wonderfully like creepy moment.
It is like someone stepped in and said, "You've gone too far, reel it back," almost real time. And they've done it, and then said, "What about this?" It's like, wow, that was too far.
But it does have some fantastically like creepy moments, and I think there's a lot of sort of interesting ghosts. I think the Scoleri brothers are pretty great.
Very cartoony as well. As Matthew says, you can see where the influence of the cartoon has come in there. But I completely agree. I think the image of Vigo and the image of Janosz with the eyes are both really strong. I mean, the Vigo image is now virtually iconic, isn't it? I think people just remember that. I think, Ghostbusters 2 was good because of that. It's like, no. Go and watch it again. There's good bits in it, but... Ugh.
Yeah, I think they're genuinely outweighed by
Statue of Liberty.
Yeah, that's one of the bits I'm sort of on the fence about. I don't really care about that. It's fine. I don't. Again, the child in me, even at the time, was like, that doesn't make sense.
Yeah,
I don't see how that works. I had a real problem. I wasn't like a clean freak child, but I've never thought, oh, slime. So, for example, again, talk about toys for a second. I didn't have a lot of the Ghostbusters toys, but I had this sort of... I wanted Ecto-1 and I wanted the headquarters, the firehouse. Didn't have either, but my friends did. But I had all the individual figures and that was great. But the firehouse was always something you would see in the ads and you think, oh my God, that's great. You get to take the slime and pour it through and it goes through the grates on the top and pours on all the levels. That's brilliant. So I went to my friend's house at the age of whatever it was, like 6 or something, and said, oh, can we put the slime in? And he said in his most dejected voice, no, it's really difficult to get the slime out. We're not going to do that. I'm like, oh, but that's the only thing I want to do.
It's too much work for fun.
Yeah, it's like, thanks, man. Fuck. But it is one of those odd things that I just went, slime, ugh. And this film relies on slime so much. It is such a key component to everything.
A river of slime.
Buckets of slime. Toasters with slime bits in them. Slime trying to get Sigourney Weaver and a baby.
Yes, the bathtub full of slime.
Yeah, it's and then hosing each other down, covered in goop, going, I love you. It's just a bit... weird.
Positively charged slime.
No, it's not. It's a fucking orgy.
Egon's been sleeping with it.
Oh, it's so weird.
So for those listeners who haven't seen Ghostbusters 2, I usually get to the synopsis a little bit before we just go into all the crazy batshit stuff. But allow me to elaborate now, even though we already know about bathtubs.
A bunch of slime happens from start to end, and a painting goes, oh, slime. You're welcome.
Why are you not the person who writes the back of the DVD boxes?
Oh, I would love to do that. I'd save
the
so
boys
much time.
are back together. Lots of slime. Painting wants slime. Oh.
Would not recommend.
So, synopsis for Ghostbusters 2. The film opens with the title reading 5 years later, almost as if it's actually 5 years later in real life.
Whoa. Shit, son.
And we find the Ghostbusters living in hard times. The restraining order has forbidden the boys to partake in paranormal warfare, and as a result, they've had to seek other lines of work. Ray and Winston spare their time performing at children's birthday parties, and Egon is busy conducting experiments investigating the effect of human emotions on the environment, leaving Ghostbusters in the past. Venkman and Dana have split up, and Venkman now hosts a local cable show called The World of the Psychic. Dana, now divorced and the mother of a little baby named Oscar, works as an art restorer in a museum, and this is where the plot kicks in with slime and the painting that we've already kind of mentioned. Dana is restoring a portrait of the 16th century tyrant by the name of Vigo the Carpathian, and the portrait becomes cursed. The evil Vigo wants to return to life by taking over the body of Oscar, Dana's son. Vigo has enlisted Dana's boss, the aforementioned terribly Polish-accented Janosz, to compel Dana to cooperate. Soon, sludge and slime flow through the streets of Manhattan, and the Ghostbusters have to reunite to save the city from paranormal evil.
Yeah.
Heck of a coincidence it happened to that baby and that painting.
Oh, no. That fucking baby. Those babies, the twins that played
The twins,
them.
yeah.
talking about coincidences, because I was thinking about Ghostbusters 2 earlier today, as one might expect, coming to record this. And I was also thinking about Ghostbusters, and like this is one of the bits where I think like it is genuinely better than the first one, in that the justification for the plot in this is shaky. You know, it happens to be Dana working at that museum, inexplicably having changed career from a cellist to a
as one does,
painting restorer,
sifting through art.
You know, it's okay. This is a cursed artifact that's been unearthed or brought here for the first time. It possesses the guy. She has a baby and is kind of the person he's already obsessed with. It more or less makes sense as an inciting event. When you go back to the first Ghostbusters, the inciting event is just she happens to live in that building, and the building in the past got made as a ghost magnet, but that only comes up in one scene. The first film is full of stuff just kind of happens in the first film. Yeah. There isn't really a plot to hang it on.
No, Ghostbusters is weak in that regard, you're right.
Yeah, Ghostbusters 2 is much better, and this is probably the influence of the cartoon in actually coming to, like, having some kind of coherent plot that everything hangs around. I can remember, like, the idea of that the slime is, like, all of the bad emotions of the city, like, congealed together. I found that, and still do, like, such a great image. And I think, you know, both of the Ghostbusters films are such great films about kind of New York, and that speaks so much to, like, here is a city where everyone is so angry and frustrated that it's literally taken on physical form.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
It's also interesting because technically we were speaking about Spider-Man the other week, and the idea that obviously after 9/11 in Spider-Man 1, where there was this idea, you mess with New York, one of us mess with all us, New York, baby! There is that sort of rallying of you don't fuck with New York kind of thing. And it's interesting that Ghostbusters 2 has that similar thing, like we need a symbol, you know, it's the Statue of Liberty. I don't think, though, it would go down that way. I think the only thing they would feel was fear. And I think the town would be ravaged by more ghosts and stuff. It wouldn't work out.
Well, it is also a town where every year they have a parade of giant inflated characters down the main streets.
Yeah, that's terrifying too.
Yeah. They've got used to it.
They got a lot of parades in New York, to be fair.
So, should we have a little guess for Rotten Tomatoes
scores? Scores on the doors.
I'm going to guess that Ghostbusters 2 has a current score of 89 percentile.
Okay. Tim, what do you think?
I think pretty low. I think 63.
Wow.
Stuart Ashen?
I think a bit higher. I'm going to go 72.
Alec Plowman?
I'm going to go bang on 60%.
It's 53%.
Jesus Christ, really?
It's pretty bad, yeah.
If this is based on critics of the time, I can see
it is mostly, yeah.
Yeah, I
where
can
is
see
your
why
god
that
now,
would be.
Tim?
He's even got an average of 5.3 as well. So it's like 53%, 5.3, which is
fair.
Any guesses for the original, the 1984 Ghostbusters?
Well, now my confidence is shaken.
I think it's one of those ones that's got a cult following over time. I think the reason it's so popular is a lot to do with the VHS boom, and I reckon it's probably, given that was a 53, I reckon it's only about 78.
Yeah, I'm lowballing at 72 now.
Stuart?
87.
Alec?
83.
97%.
Whoa! Wow.
That is a load of
bear in mind
nonsense.
that is the amount of positive reviews. It's not a score
They're
out
not
of
100%. Yeah.
It's got an average of 8.1, which is 8
high.
is yeah. And just for funsies, Ghostbusters 2016. And we'll talk about that in a moment.
Yeah.
Because there is quite a few connections between 2 and 2016. Any guesses for the Paul Feig?
I'm going to say 62.
Tim?
75. I'm going to smack on the 3/4 mark.
I was going to say 62. I'm going to say 63.
You son of a bitch.
I'm going to go 70%.
73 for 2016, with an average of 6.5. And
Also fair.
yeah, I would say so. And kind of the interesting thing, as we know, there was a lot of crazy, weird backlash with, there are a bunch of women taking over our childhoods.
The word you're looking for is dickheads.
The internet, yeah. Dickheads of the internet took over the world for a brief second. And that is a big part of why a lot of people, I'm obviously not accusing you of this, Tim, but a lot of people go back and look at Ghostbusters 2 and think it's better than it is because they were so pissed off by, bloody women in our films.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't like women. I want blokes and more blokes. And there was this weird thing. There's a
Visit my website,
kind of,
blokesandmoreblokes.net.
blokes and more blokes. women can't bust ghosts.com. And there's this weird kind of retroactive going back to look at Ghostbusters 2 and think, yeah, that isn't that bad compared to the 2016 one. And I thought the Rotten Tomato score was kind of going to reflect that, and it totally doesn't. They're kind of, I don't know how I would rate them, maybe. Like I said, I'm not that keen on any of the Ghostbusters movie, like Matt said. But yeah, 2016 is not a travesty, but it's nothing particularly interesting to me.
Here's how I'd rate them. Ghostbusters, on my review site, I do it out of 5, so it'll be out of 5. Ghostbusters 1 is a 3 out of 5 film. It's fine. It's okay. It's got a lot of lightning in the bottle kind of luck to it, in that it's people at the top of their game having a lot of fun with something that's really fucking stupid. But in terms of structure and all that sort of stuff, dumb. Ghostbusters 2, 2 out of 5. Fails a lot. Doesn't do as good. Still quite impressive visually. Effects quite nice, etc., etc. Fuck you, Bill Murray. I'll go back to that later. Ghostbusters remake. I wanted to love it. Very disappointing. Primarily because I thought it was a comedy. And if you go back at the other films, they're not comedies. They have comedic people doing really straight stuff, except Ghostbusters 2, and that makes it entertaining. And you had comedians doing it. But Ghostbusters, the remake, or the whatever you want to fucking call it, the new version, 2016 version, it was so heavy on the comedy, and the cinematography was so bright to get the improv sort of going, so much dancing, and
there is too much dancing in that movie. Dancing. You're right.
And I really wanted to enjoy it, and I really wanted to support it, and I thought there are moments where it's really quite entertaining. I liked a lot of support, things like the visual effects of the ghosts being live action with a bit of CG enhancement. That's great. But again, it's like, oh, Patty, wonderful. Should she be like a scientist? No. And I think that the supports were interesting. But yeah, a lot of big problems. I've written a review on the whole thing anyway, but not nearly as problematic as Ghostbusters 2 for me, because at the end of the day, they had to come in saying fresh and different and didn't, whereas Ghostbusters 2 just sort of hybridized itself with the cartoon and made it more unpleasant.
Yeah, I would say my issue, because I had much the same attitude towards the Ghostbusters sort of reboot, which was I was going against the hubbub of dickheads on the internet and was perfectly willing to give it a chance, and came out reasonably disappointed. Thought they were good moments. I think it interestingly goes sort of the other direction to Ghostbusters 2, whereas Ghostbusters 2 does have a more of a plot to hang the jokes on, even though if some of the jokes are broader than they were in the first one. The 2016 Ghostbusters, it falls prey to a lot of the problem of modern American comedies, which is, we're just going to let everybody improv and be funny, and we're not going to really ever put an end to a scene. And
straight man, who needs a straight man or woman? Ha ha ha! Just everybody's funny at the same time.
Yes, and the plot is just a loose excuse for comedians to just kind of fart around in a scene and hopefully find something
sometimes
funny.
Literally fart around in a scene.
Sometimes literally.
Wontons.
Yeah, it just
Where was the editor that day? Was he ill?
Yeah, Paul Feig is sort of because he's one of the most common directors for these kind of films, are very guilty of it. But it's a general trend of just people need to, like, writers, do your job and actually write the damn film and put some jokes in it rather than just relying on funny people being funny.
So a lot of people say, most of Ghostbusters was ad-libbed and stuff. No, it weren't. If you look at the script, no. I mean, they worked around it, don't get me wrong. It's not as tight as I don't think as Ghostbusters 2, but it's nowhere near as improv
It comes down to
as
the delivery. That's the key
remake,
thing. The delivery and the chemistry. That's what makes it work.
So there was a very long journey towards the 2016 reboot as well, because there was actually Ghostbusters 3 that was in production. It went in like pre-production, and Ramis and Aykroyd had actually written a script, mostly Aykroyd, and he kind of got Ramis to kind of tag along. And it was going to be called Ghostbusters 3 Hellbent. And it was going to involve some sort of like, they have to actually journey into hell and more like demons and stuff, and how that would work. And then in 2004, it still hadn't been made, and Bill Murray was like, I want nothing to do with Ghostbusters. And they had been in talks to cast Ben Stiller as his successor in the Ghostbusters group. Surprise, surprise, fucking nothing happened with that. And then, of course, Harold Ramis died in 2014, and it kind of just went nowhere. Phil Lord and Chris Miller then took over as potential reboot people. They then left, and it was completely cancelled. And then Paul Feig shows up and says, "Hey, I want to do it," and that's how the 2016. It went through like 5 different hands by the time it actually got made, and it was originally a third film.
Didn't they base the video game on large aspects of the unused third script?
I'm not surprised that you know that, Stuart.
I know that.
You are correct, absolutely.
Yeah, I was also fairly certain about the video game thing, but I'm pretty sure that Evolution, the David Duchovny Alien
the
film,
Head and Shoulders advert.
The Head and Shoulders advert was basically based on a draft from, at some point, Ghostbusters.
I don't mind that film.
Interesting.
And because it's got Dan Aykroyd in it as the mayor, and it's a team of 4 scientists solving a problem, and you could quite easily swap out aliens for ghosts in it.
Yeah.
And I think Dan Aykroyd's been one of the main people who's occasionally tried to bring it back because he bloody loves the supernatural. He's obsessed with crystal skulls, which is,
His Crystal Skull vodka
yes,
makes, doesn't he? Yeah,
exactly.
Doesn't Dan Aykroyd have quite strange spiritualist beliefs, and sort of certain aspects of them are worked into the scripts? And
Yes,
See, as much as Dan Aykroyd loves the shit out of these things, I think in an interview with him and Ivan Reitman, they were saying that they waited a little too long. If they released it sooner, Ghostbusters 2 that is, it would have worked better, hopefully. But as much as Dan Aykroyd is the one sort of spearheading the charge, saying, "This is my jam, I get to talk nonsense in uninterrupted sentences for 3 or 4 minutes about hellscapes and ley
and
lines.
just hang out with my friends.
Pretty much, yeah. On the other end of the spectrum, and one of the reasons I don't like, especially Ghostbusters 2, is Bill motherfucking Murray. I heard that they sent him a script, he shredded it, sent it back to them and said, "I'm not going to read this script." And I do a quiz in Norwich, and I did a sort of true and false question and stoked the ideas of the...
Is Bill Murray a dick?
True or false, the answer is true. That was the idea that in Ghostbusters 2, Bill Murray never wears the outfit, the Ghostbusters overalls. And the amount of people went, "Oh, fuck, does he? I don't think he does." He does, by the way, he does. But the fact that you don't know, because he spends most of the film in a fucking coat, and it's just him being dragged to the table, dragged to the film. I'm pretty sure it's only he did it because he could get like greenlit on something else he was working on. The thing is, everyone loves Bill Murray, and everyone loves Bill Murray in Ghostbusters, and everyone loves Venkman, but he is probably the worst element of both films, solely because he's obviously not interested. Venkman's an awful human being and an awful character. He was a douchebag in the cartoon, but at least he was a sort of lovable, cowardy kind of trying to be suave jerk. But in the films, he's just a straight up creepy fucking guy. And I mean, he's with Dana for a while. Then she goes off and learns, decides music's not her thing anymore. She's now into paintings, which just shows that Dana's a very, very talented character. Has a baby with somebody who just out of the fucking picture entirely, and he's just still creeping around like a little freak. But this is the thing, because this is the most controversial statement I'll say all night. And be prepared, audience. I don't get Bill Murray.
Once again, we are in agreement, Mr.
Because
Stogdon.
I've grown up with so many Bill Murray films, and I've told myself he's the cool kid in class, and I love him, he's great. But the more I watch Bill Murray, the more I realize I don't get Bill Murray. And I understand why people enjoy Bill Murray, but I'm pretty sure, I think I was talking to Jack about this once before, and I was saying the idea of Clark Gable. People are like, "Oh, he's a sex symbol." And look at Clark Gable now and show it to some sort of teenager and say, "This man's sexy, right?" And it's like, "No. Who's that flat-headed, big-eared freak?" It's like, "That's Clark Gable. He doesn't give a damn." I wouldn't be surprised because he did all kinds of films. He did period films and crime films and gangster films. He did everything. And I wouldn't be surprised in 40, 50 years' time, people show people like Bill Murray performances and say, "Who's this half-arsing it motherfucker?" Turning up in every film going, "Hey, I don't really care about being here." And every time I watch him now, I can't get into his performance. There are so few Bill Murray films I genuinely enjoy what he's doing, because he's always doing the same thing, seemingly being very lackluster all the way through, and everyone's just applauding him for it. And this is one of the best examples. People love Bill Murray in this film. "There you go, baby, give me some of that, yeah, oh, you're great, not one of the best." But it's like, this is not funny. This is really tedious. But we all love him for some reason. You don't have to side with me. Good.
I see where you're coming from, though.
I think he's all right.
Oh, fucking hell, Alec. Get off that fence.
He's considered a national treasure in America. He's just like this absolute hero who goes around like pranking people in real life because he's wacky Bill Murray. He's just a bloke. He's a
he
mediocre actor.
Eats their chips and says, "No one will believe you," and then walks away. It's like, that's quite weird and extra. But if he did that, like, in in a really creepy
He goes up
sexual
and
way.
puts his hands over people's eyes and shit like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Weirdo.
Yeah.
One major problem and sticking point that I have with Venkman in this film, a thing that has never ever made sense to me and always bugged me, is the scene where Dana comes round to his apartment to stay and she's got the baby, the Oscar, with her, and she needs a new nappy, and Venkman gives her some prize, like, sweatshirt that used to belong to like a baseball player or something, and is like, now don't poop in this because it like I got it from a girl who got it from baseballman. And so, you know, you got to be very careful. Now, one, what does he think a baby is going to do in a nappy other than pee and poop? And two, has he no other fabric in his entire apartment that he could use?
Use one of your own shirts or your own pants or something.
If I remember correctly, Dana turns up without any clothes as well. She just rushed out with a coat on and crosses New York. And he has to get something for her as well, and he's much more concerned.
I honestly can't remember that bit.
I think he literally is more concerned about getting in her pants. So he's like, right, I've got to give this baby something. And I think I was like sort of looking at clothes, seeing what's sort of clean. And again, he's just I don't understand how he survives. And his TV show, who the fuck is watching his weird-ass psychic TV show?
Bill Murray.
Bill Murray.
The psychic TV show where the psychic can't be bothered to be there.
Maybe it's Dan Aykroyd in his weird supernatural... I don't know. So, more figures for you. How much did it make at the box office?
Shitload.
Oh,
yeah.
This one, I don't think it made that much.
Budget and box office?
200,000. 200,000. 200,000 children's souls. I think 200 million. 200 million. As far as box office, I'm sorry, a budget, I imagine.
Budget and box office.
50 million budget, 200 million box office.
Okay. Tim, what do you think?
I'm going to go a bit higher than that. I'm going to go 75 million on the budget and 300 million box office.
Stuart,
I'm going to go 40 million budget. I would say 175 million box office.
Alec Plowman.
60 million budget, 275 million box office.
It's a 37 million budget.
Yeah, 80s.
And 215 box office.
See, that's not good for a huge...
Not crazy.
It's not bad. It's
obviously made your money back and stuff like that.
I suppose toys was where the money was.
Yeah, it didn't. It kind of exploded more in the toys and kind of being a cultural thing.
I'm sure it cleaned up on VHS as well.
You hinted at that earlier, Tim. It's kind of like, yeah.
Also because I'm sure that for a lot of the demographic, it was the case that their parents didn't want to take them to the cinema to see it because content and VHS was considered a much more appropriate way for younger kids to watch it at home, where it could be supervised. But that's maybe just in the UK where we're really particular about these things, I think, not compared to the rest of the world.
Yeah, I don't know. I think America received it in the cinema reasonably well, but again, different sort of audience, basically, I think.
And I suppose when you're talking about things like, I don't know how these are carried into box office, I suppose it's not at all for box office takings, but the fact that you have got the cartoon out there at the same time may mean that, for example, parents are happy to tell their kids, just watch the cartoon on TV, we'll get it when the video comes out, kind of thing.
Those are still pretty good figures, though. That's a success.
Yeah, it's not bad. Yeah.
It also came out the same summer as Batman, didn't it?
It came out 2 months before Batman or something like that. It was very, very, shortly before that.
And was top of the box office until the instant Batman hit, and then everyone forgot about it.
Yep.
Man, that Batman. I remember being interviewed for the local newspaper because we were queuing for Batman. And they didn't use my quote. But they showed my friend Carl because he had a Batman T-shirt.
What was your quote, Stuart? Eat my bat cunt!
Well, you were there?
I thought something that wouldn't go in the paper. That's what I got.
No, they completely lied about what everybody said as well, because everyone was like, oh, what bit are you looking forward to the most? And everyone said, well, the Joker, because he looks amazing from the thing, and we're 14, so that's edgy and cool. And I think it was Michael said, oh yeah, the Joker, and they quoted him in the newspaper saying, oh, I'm looking most forward to the Batmobile car.
Oh, fuck off.
He was most displeased with that.
Fake news.
Yeah. Eastern Evening News, fake news.
I'm looking forward to Kim Basinger's performance as Vicky Vale.
I'm looking forward to the returning performance of Harvey Dent, who's, of course, portrayed by the same actor who played Lando Calrissian.
We've kind of touched upon the family-friendly side of things and how it spins from being less family-friendly to more family-friendly. There's a weird amount of family of the cast cameos in this movie. I don't know if you guys know this.
Jason Reitman and stuff.
Oh.
Jason Reitman is in it, you're right, who's obviously the son of Ivan Reitman. He plays the boy at the birthday party who insults them. And Catherine Reitman, Ivan's daughter, also plays the girl with the puppy in the lab. We also have Bill Murray's brother, Brian Doyle Murray.
He's in lots of things, to be fair.
He's in other things. He's the psychiatric doctor. And then Dan Aykroyd's niece, Karen, is also one of the school children. So there's a bunch of weird, like, family cameos. I don't know if that was a conscious choice to go like, hey, more family friendly, there's more kids in this movie kind of thing, or
they'd all just had kids by the time that they were making the second one.
Dad, can we be in Ghostbusters? Yeah.
I'll go on and direct Juno in the future and lots of other things. It'll be all right, Dad. I had to learn from you.
Well done, Jason. Carry on, son.
My last point on Ghostbusters 2 is I really hate the end image where Vigo's painting has turned into like a pretty Renaissance painting of the Ghostbusters being naked. I know it's hard to end these things, but guys, there's a team of you. Think of something else.
Yeah, and if you're stuck for an ending, Highlander to it, because Highlander 2 had the best ending.
Back to the planet Zeist.
Smiley face. Back to Zeist we go.
I know it is very strange because I must admit I don't get on with the whole. I get the logic of the narrative of evil slime is evil, but positive feelings outweigh. It's a good message for kids. Whatever, that's fine. And again, New York rallying behind a symbol. Again, very American, very cool, fine, no problem. The symbol, however, is smashing a fucking building up with a statue, but whatever, that's fine. And then hosing each other down and being like a sing-song and having a fucking great time, therefore we love each other. But the painting is so weird. It doesn't make... I mean, the first film ends badly enough as it is, with just a sort of flat montage of them walking away and the crowd sort of cheers like, oh, yeah, this is a thing. But, yeah, the second one, I mean, the painting's nicely painted. But it's a bit weird, and I don't understand. Did the museum then keep that? Do they hang that? Do they try and restore it some more?
Do they go evil and start coming in?
Yeah, because why does Ray get turned twice?
Yeah, that is. I was going to bring that up. The weird Ray gets specific. That feels very much like a Dan Aykroyd wanting to be weird, and there's a cut bit in it somewhere where like he spends 15 minutes talking to the painting or something.
His possessed face is just very odd. His tongue out and his eyes a little bit cross going.
He looks like a
pederast.
Someone's inflated a pug.
I would take that. Yeah, it's very strange.
Jack touched on this briefly, talking about the family being cast in it and the girl with is it a puppy?
The puppy in the lab.
Puppy in the lab. And we've talked about how disappointing Bill Murray is in this film. I think Harold Ramis is fantastic in this film. I think he's as good in this one as he is in the first one. Yeah. I think he gets a lot of the best lines. And
speaking of that painting, is the whole Ray, can you get away from hit the monster, whatever it is? Yeah.
And and you touched on briefly earlier about how it's not necessarily, a lot of the lines aren't written as funny. They're just delivered in funny ways, and he's got the perfect like deadpan for that. Just stuff like, let's see what happens when we take away the parents and bring in the puppy, or whatever the line is. And stuff like that. The fact that he had a slinky when he was a kid but straightened it. I think he's great in this.
I'd say that's fair.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think Ramis is one of the strongest performances across the two films.
And it's terrible that they still don't give Winston anything to do.
Winston gets a handful of lines, maybe. Yeah.
That's so disappointing. Upsets me a lot.
And he was going to have a much bigger role from the first film onwards. It was going to be Eddie Murphy, and then Eddie Murphy backed out, and they reduced the role hugely.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, see, that kind of shit. I mean, I know I wanted John Candy involved at some point as well, and yeah, I mean, again, it's so many bits and pieces in this whole franchise that it's so close to being astonishingly good. Shut up, Ghostbusters fans. And it just near misses by just really stupid decisions made within itself. The first one is, well, we don't need a fourth character apparently, but we kind of do, so let's just fucking half-arse it. And look, either write the Winston character out entirely, or just make him a good, solid character. Then you got the second film, same thing. You have a chance to redeem yourselves here. You have a chance to make... Nope, same problems every time, just heightened and magnified. Then you got the remake of, you have a chance to really do something new here. Make the same sort of mistakes and amplify it by making it too comedy-based. And Ghostbusters 3, in terms of the actual... Because I think, again, we talked about the Ghostbusters 3 being made at one point, and the idea that obviously, Murray being so against it, but I'm pretty sure there was talk about it from the studios still doing it. The idea of Murray would come back if his character was a ghost. And
interesting.
they were
That's
like,
such a
"That's
Bill Murray thing."
Yeah, and they said that's an interesting idea. We might be able to go with that. We might be able to make that work." And the problem was Harold Ramis, if I remember correctly, directed Year One with Michael Cera and Jack Black, which he was convinced would be a hit, and it was a piece of shit. And the studio went, "Oh, maybe Ramis doesn't know what he's talking about. Maybe we shouldn't sink a ton of money into a Ghostbusters film. Maybe we need to get rid of this and other things." And it developed into where it is. But I think, if I'm honest with you, that's why I think the real Ghostbusters is the best format for Ghostbusters, because it should be a police procedural. Should be Monster of the Week. What is it this time? The alarm goes off, the phone rings, fucking we're out of here now, off and away, job done. As a film, the story will always be disappointing, but you need that kind of budget to make it arguably work. I still think now a Netflix or a Amazon or even like an HBO Ghostbusters series would be a great fucking idea.
We've got Lost in Space on Netflix.
That's okay.
Yeah, it's a weird thing. I'm like, it's a high budget Lost in Space that's not featuring Matt LeBlanc.
He had such a cool helmet in that, though. Going up. Oh, that was cool. Nothing else in the film is any good.
I'll be very disappointed, though, if they don't include the Apollo 440 remix of the
I'm sure some...
tune.
No.
I apologise. There are two good things in that film.
Complete with all Matt LeBlanc quotes in it.
I think...
I'm Joey.
Forget
about it.
If 2018 has proved anything, it will be the exact same song, but done by like Portishead or something. A really slow rendition, very soulful, like dun, 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 dun. Because we just, all the I think I've put this in a tweet recently. All the positive songs of the past are now the distant echoes of the present and are all somber. So it has to be all the upbeat, cool pop songs, but sung soulfully and very, very somberly.
So are we saying that our sequelized Ghostbusters 2 has to have like
Ray Parker Jr.
Or Jackie Wilson Higher and Higher, but re-sung by like Tom York or something?
Yes, the radio is lower and lower.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, I think Matt is spot on with if you take Ghostbusters and do something slightly different with it, like your Monster of the Week idea, I think it would work. But going back to what you said earlier, actually, where it really was lightning in a bottle, just everything happened to come together and, oh man, this is good. Then when you try and recreate it, there shouldn't have been a sequel in the sense of being a direct sequel, as the people themselves knew, which is why I imagine our sequels are going to be interesting.
Surely we can fix this. Surely we have produced a fact, which is that it's fucking almost impossible to do this, and yet, bloody well try.
Do it,
now
we shall.
That is a segue.
Yes.
So that is time to get into your pitches. Let's get some teases, since we're still in reel one, and I'm going to come to the team of Alec and Stuart first. What is your team name, please, sirs? Oh, that's not a good start.
I'll let you deliver the magic that is.
Our team name this week will be I Ain't Afraid of No Tea, Vicar.
Oh my God. Yeah. It's a gauntlet has been thrown down, sir.
Yeah, them's fighting words.
Is it? I can't remember why. Where's my grandpa dice? I've earned them.
I wonder if the audience are going to go, I don't get it.
Oh.
It was because, Poltergeist, our team was more Ghost Figure.
That's why I suggested it.
I thought it was just funny in its own right.
It is funny.
I just thought you were being clever. I won't make that mistake again.
Even more clever in referencing that. Yeah. So, gentlemen, what is the title of your Ghostbusters 2 fix?
Our title is Ghostbusters 2, but 2 spelt T-O-O.
No really? Roman numerals for you.
No, damn them.
Going for that Dumb and Dumber 2 audience.
Yes. They're out there somewhere. I mean, our script isn't quite as clever, but...
The Look Who's Talking To crowd.
All 6 of them.
Yeah. And it would be released in the space year 2007.
Okay.
Right. Our film is directed by Edgar Wright.
Interesting.
This film exists instead of Hot Fuzz in our alternate universe.
Oh, it's 2007, yeah, of course.
The character of Steve Crosby will be played by Simon Pegg.
Who would have guessed?
The character of Keith Garrod.
Wait for it.
Nick Frost. Miranda Stantz by Tamsin Grieg. James Madeley by Peter Serafinovich. Dana Venkman, Sigourney Weaver. Juliette Trebas, Rosamund Pike. And Sean Scorer, Michael Smiley. And the score to this movie by David Arnold.
Oh, David motherfucking Arnold. I like it.
That's a cool. That's
Because
another
he's
cool
worked
match.
quite a bit with Edgar Wright and done many a Bond over the years.
So I've gone proper like Edgar Wright isms and Space Cast and everything else, and that makes sense. Yeah, because let's face it, if you're casting, if you're bringing in Edgar Wright, that's exactly what I would expect.
The elevator pitch. A small group of lazy, bored and incompetent Ghostbusters franchisees must get their act together in order to save rural England.
I think you missed a trick though, because it probably sounds like you're going to have some really strongly written female characters. Edgar Wright, don't do that. But that's me slaying Edgar Wright, not you guys, obviously.
We're pissing off like half the internet this time.
Bill Murray, Edgar Wright. I've run out of people. Ghostbusters. Donald Trump.
Over to you, Matt and Tim. Team name, please, sirs.
We are the Tough Harbour Chicks.
Yeah.
That's a Ghostbusters joke I like. So, for those who may need that explained to them, at one point they talk about the structural integrity of the Statue of Liberty being able to move, and they say, she's tough, she's a harbour chick! Yeah. So we are Tough Harbour Chicks as well. And we are also controlled by NES controllers.
Yes. And our film will be released in the space year 1996, 12 years after the original.
And what's it called?
It is called Ghostbusters Inc.
Oh, interesting.
And our director is Joe Johnston, I should say, who people will probably know best at the moment from things like Captain America, the First Avenger. But back around this period, he had just done things like Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, The Rocketeer, and Jumanji. And our returning cast is basically cameos done largely through archive footage.
Interesting. Okay.
Like a broken arm, here's our cast.
Jesus Christ. That took me far too long.
Yeah. Ghostbusters full of shit jokes. I thought you'd give you one. So, Eduardo Rivera will be played by Freddie Rodriguez, who had been in Dead Presidents at this point, goes on to be in Harsh Times, Bobby, Planet Terror, lots of other things. Kylie Griffin will be played by Robin Tunney from Empire Records, then goes on to be in The Craft and End of Days. Yolanda Jackson, played by Taraji P. Henson. Admittedly, she's only done TV stuff at this point, so Saved by the Bell, ER, but goes on to be in Smokin' Aces, Curious Case Benjamin Button, Hidden Figures, and lots of other big things. Hitesh Miller, Eric Avari, from California Man, Stargate, goes on to be in Independence Day, The Mummy.
He's one of those people who, when you see a picture of him, you'll go, oh, it's him!
That guy, yeah. In the role of Cartwright, Daniel Stern from Home Alone and City Slickers, and goes on to be in Very Bad Things. Dr. Bream is played by Tim Robbins of The Shawshank Redemption and Arlington Road and Mission to Mars and High Fidelity. And providing certain creature effects that we'll get back to in more detail later, Doug Jones with the voice of Frank Welker.
Oh, nice. Bit of Frank Welker.
That's a combination.
And special effects, or special makeups, I should say, makeup effects being done by Rick Baker to really time with that whole Doug Jones physical thing. But we'll get back with more of that detail next week.
Can I just ask, isn't Eduardo Rivera a character from Extreme Ghostbusters?
Stuart, you may be onto something there.
Well, I don't know how I know that, because I've never seen Extreme Ghostbusters.
As is Kylie Griffin, and the other names are alludes to. But we'll get back to that a little later. Our composer is Wojciech Kieler. We're going playing this straight, basically. He did Bram Stoker's Dracula, Ninth Gate, Pianist. It's all very choral and pianos and heavy and dirgy and very Polish and very actual Polish. And really, really dark and very, very cool stuff. I think that would have a nice, suitable tone for what we're going for.
Interesting.
And our elevator pitch. In a world where ghostbusting is a run-of-the-mill blue-collar profession, a fresh troupe of Ghostbusters are dispatched on their first assignment.
Little similar there.
Bunch of idiots trying to do ghostbusting. That could be interesting. So, we will delve deeper into their pitches next week, folks. So we will see you then. Well, you'll hear us again. You won't see us. It's a podcast. It's the Tough Harbor Chicks versus I Ain't Afraid of No TV. That is a good joke. See you next week, folks.
Bye. Cheerio.
See you